Okay, hi, my name is Frank Shepard. I want to welcome you to the finance session. A quick bio on me, and it's going to be quick because it's going to be very quick on everybody because we ran out of time in the last one. My background is, I see a picture of everybody. My background is in finance. I worked at Lehman Brothers for several years in finance. And then moved on to there to work at a small firm, actually with a guy named Jonathan Webb, who is one of our speakers. I spent most of my time after that focusing on private equity firms. My educational background is a BS in accounting from Bentley College, an MBA from Columbia, and a doctorate in international economics and finance from Pace University. So quickly, and I'm going to be very quick and cheap on your bios. I've got George Van Ansen. He's a managing director in institutional equity. He spent a lot of time in that area and also worked at Goldman Sachs in institutional equity. He spent and given back to his community a lot, serving on the board of Harvard Business School Alumni Association, president of HBS, the African American Alumni Association, the Columbia Board of Visitors, the Riverside Church Council, and many others. He graduated from Brooklyn College. Brooklyn Technical High School, received a BA from Columbia College, an MBA with second-year honors from Harvard, where he serves as the president of the African American Students Union. At Columbia, he was twice elected president of the senior class. Jonathan Webb has over 30 years experience in the investment banking industry. His core competencies include M&A, capital raising, principal investing, strategic planning, and he's a business developer. Lately, one of the things he just finished doing about a year ago was he was a co-founder of a SPAC that was listed on the New York Stock Exchange and actually did their acquisition. It was the first African American led SPAC that was listed on the New York Stock Exchange. Jonathan has a BA from Morehouse College, and he has an MBA from Columbia University. Okay. In addition, we have Bernard Williams. He is an associate of business control and operations management for Santander Bank, which I believe is one of the biggest banks or the biggest bank in the world, which I didn't know, but my wife does have an account there. His role involves ensuring that day-to-day banking employees follow proper guidelines and conform to due diligence when any customer is related. And that as we know, is incredibly important. I'm going to stop there so that I don't take up too much time. And everybody's bio is on the website. I encourage you to read it. But we have a great panel of people, and I'm very excited about this. The rules, just so I go through a couple of the rules. You want to submit your questions through chat. I am watching chat right now, so I have my eyes on them. There are captions available, and if you have any technical questions, put those on chat. So thank you for joining us. And right now, I'm going to move, if there aren't any questions, I'm going to move right into the questions that I have for our financial panel. Are there any questions? Did Jonathan Webb get in?
Yes.
All right. Okay. That's good news. Okay. Now I'm comfortable. So I'm going to start off with the first question, and that is, how do you think the financial industry has changed since the crisis of 2008? We couldn't keep the accountants from talking. Everybody here is.
I'll start, Frank. This is Jonathan Webb. So the crisis in 2008, I think, heightened the sensitivity to the amount of leverage that companies would look to put on their balance sheets as they were looking at transactions. And I think that prior to that, obviously, the lenders were a lot more liberal in the amount of money that you could borrow in your transactions, and primarily on leverage buyouts. And you also saw a variety of credit instruments be developed on Wall Street. And as you know, you and I spent many years, on Wall Street together. And whenever you begin to see an excess of new financial instruments developed and derivatives of those instruments developed, you're probably getting to a point where you want to revisit the amount of leverage and look at how conservative your credit policies are. So one of the things that I did see was a heightened sensitivity to the amount of credit that was that was in place. Obviously, you saw on a federal level, you also saw heightened regulation as it related to the rules surrounding underwriting of securities and the regulation that was on banks as well. So there was, during the Obama administration, they clearly heightened the amount of regulation that was there. And I would say that those were two of the key takeaways. Obviously, this goes in cycles, and we've seen, obviously the credit markets open up a lot more since then under the previous administration. And as a result of that, more money has flowed into the system, and you've seen valuations creep up as a result of that, and a lot more activity, in mergers and acquisitions in the marketplace recently.
Any other thoughts?
So I'll just add to that. Look, what happened in 2008 was an existential threat to the industry and to the global economy. And as Jonathan so rightly pointed out, generated by excess leverage. But not only excess leverage, but in many situations, lax regulation. And there are historical precedents to this. You go back to the Great Depression, and as a result of blunders along the way and structural problems, you wound up with the Glass-Steagall Act. Fast forward to Black Monday in 1987, which was not an existential threat. It was an overindulgence in the markets. Then you had further regulations on equity derivatives and portfolio insurance. In 2008, over-leverage, mortgages, lax, what would be considered lax regulation. And then you come up with the Volcker Rule, and essentially a wholesale change in the structure of financial services company, which in many ways resembled the Glass-Steagall Act. What can't be diminished, though, from 2008 forward was the increase in regulation and in oversight, leading us to where we are today.
I'm looking at what's going on or was going on in Washington over the last 3 years, and it looks like the VOCA Act is being dismantled piece by piece, and regulation is going away. Is that a risk? Should we be worried about that? Either one.
Well, look, from my standpoint, I don't see wholesale changes. I don't see big financial services firms having large proprietary desks. those desks have been carved out and are now separate organizations. And in fact, a lot of the firms don't even have investments in them. And the notion of taking a major proprietary position on the books has been, diminished, considerably as a result of increased regulation.
Now let's jump out of regulation and jump into our students. What do you see as the most significant opportunities for our graduates in the next 5 years?
Frank, one of the things that I would challenge the students to do is to begin to look a little bit more global in terms of how they view their careers. I think the opportunity to gain employment and experience and expertise in areas other than where you may have studied or where you may have come from would be something that I would definitely consider doing. And obviously the business community has become more and more global. But one of the things that I think the students will find is that if they decide to pursue higher education, once they begin to study, they'll find that the composition of their classmates will be from around the world. And in addition to being able to go and spend a few years working in London or in Asia or in some other part of the world, they'll also have relationships that can help them and travel with them at some point. So one of the things that I would definitely recommend that they do is to seek out opportunities in their companies where there may be a chance to spend some time abroad working and learning other business cultures and communities. And maybe at some point they'll have an opportunity to use that in their careers later on.
Okay. Bernard?
So I can add to that as well. I came into banking on the onset of the recession, and throughout that time, I've had the opportunity not only to work in New York City, but I've seen the opportunities outside of New York City when it came to banking as well. Some of the great opportunities that I've seen even at joining Santander Bank was, as was said, is just being able to be mobile. It gives the opportunity not just to be an employee in the US, but also gives the opportunity to travel to some of the other regions of the world where we have a footprint, and being able to see different aspects of the company that way as well. And it was very surprising to me, being that I'm just someone from Brooklyn that didn't even thought about, how far I would go and what possibilities there are. But as more and more as my career developed, I realized as I moved from an entry-level position and started to move up, the amount of opportunities that was not in one location, but was available to me in so many different locations, so many regions, things that I didn't even fathom that I would be able to do, and places I never thought I would be able to go.
Okay. Now I'm going to put myself on the hot seat, and I'm going to ask you what professors like me should do to prepare students to function in the finance industry in the future. What should I be doing?
So I have to say, the financial industry continues to evolve, and trying to make it fit into this, I'll say, into this box of this is how it's going to be 5 or 10 years from now is highly impossible. We can't say that the curriculum that we're using now is going to be relevant to what needs to be known 5 to 10 years from now. When I started in banking, all I thought was important was credit, deposits, loans, and those type of things. Now that I've been more in depth into my field, I'm starting to understand the importance of not only understanding risk, but being able to predict what could and might happen and prescribe some solutions that would assist a firm with trying to make sure that they'll be able to overcome those risks and whatever might happen in the future to them. So I would say professors needs to ensure that they're thinking outside of the box. Don't just give the curriculum as is, question it, push the students to want to ask more questions and look at it from different perspectives as well.
Okay. Suzette, not Jonathan?
Frank, one of the things that I would consider doing is, just as he mentioned, looking at risk. It's always interesting when a student has the chance to look at a finance concept from more than one direction. And so what you'll normally see is, a professor will bring in someone from an investment bank or a commercial bank. But I think it's also helpful to have people come in and speak to the students who work in finance, but from other fields. So to bring in a CFO from a company, or to bring in a CFO from a startup company, or a CEO from a startup company, or a portfolio manager from an asset management firm, because they will have a take on finance concepts that are different than a traditional, an investment banker or a commercial banker. And I think as students begin to look at, finance, and they see that you can look at the same concept through a various sets of windows, it tends to begin to broaden their horizon a little bit.
Good. George?
So on balance, I agree, but I think the direction is premature. So I'm making the fundamental assumption that the students we're talking about, the CUNY students and this program, are first non-traditional students who may have gone to school, truncated it, stopped working, and now they're back to complete their education. And then you may have some students that are traditional students. They got the undergraduate, they're getting a graduate degree or what have you. I think the preparation has to be how to enter the industry. Once you enter the industry, there's lots of ways to go. And so the question is, what are the foundational aspects that every student candidate needs to punch through to one of these opportunities? That is basic. I use the analogy of clearing the first hurdle first. And that first hurdle is fundamental preparation to be prepared to talk to, in this case, for me, a financial services organization. And so, what are the foundational things you need aside from being smart? Being smart is foundational. It's not even aspirational anymore, because everyone these firms talk to is smart. They have a line 3 abreast from here to Canarsie, Brooklyn, of smart people looking for the opportunities. So just being smart is not going to differentiate you. It's foundational. It's not aspirational. So you need, on the outset, is what I call 3 Ps: passion, preparation, and personality for the whole start of the process. That middle P, preparation, includes, of course, the basic accounting skills, finance skills, quantitative skills, the ability to write well and make presentations. The great Arthur Ashe said, one key to success is self-confidence, and an important key to self-confidence is preparation. And part of that preparation in those basic courses, but also to understand a bit more about the business that they want to get into, and also to have a beacon, a target of what they want to achieve in the short term to get in. That's the first hurdle, getting in. Then there are lots of ways to begin, propelling your career. And quite frankly, I'm deeply involved in recruiting. And yes, the student that is a finance major has a half a step advantage over the art history major. But the finance major that is not prepared to have a conversation with passion and personality loses to that art history major who has a passion for the business and for the industry. I'll stop right there.
That's great, though. All right, now, since I tried to put myself on the spot, I'm going to put you on the spot, and I'm obviously taking these questions out of order, but that's my Boston accent. But here's one. What is the biggest mistake or mistakes you have made in your career, and what did you learn from them? We're going to start at the bottom.
Well, Jonathan hasn't made many mistakes in his career, as I understand. And since I'm older than he is, I'll take that.
Okay.
So my mistakes in my career have been legion, lots of them. Don't have enough time to talk about them, but let me tell you about the main one. The main one was not taking enough career risk early. And I'm not talking about a stupid all-in bet on some, crazy thing. I'm talking about real career risk in terms of what Jonathan mentioned earlier, an international assignment. I didn't take early in my career a risk for an international assignment. And I am convinced to this day that I am less of a business person than I would have been had I spent 2 or 3 years in London or Hong Kong. By the time an opportunity came to do that, the ship had sailed for me in terms of my personal life. And so, that was the first, and I'm convinced that, it set me back some. So I would say, taking some career risks. Now, let me be frank. As a Black man, back then, taking career risk, it was a dangerous prospect, right? Because mentors were limited and sponsors even less.
Right. Absolutely.
So I'm probably a good runner-up on age here, so I'll go second. I would say for me, I would agree with George, which is why I raised it earlier, that the international piece, I had an opportunity to work in London, and I didn't pursue it as I wish I had. I had an opportunity to work in San Francisco, and I didn't do it. And for me, I looked at a track that was visible to me, that I had seen others go down this path, and I knew where that path would take me. So once I got on that conveyor belt, I never came off. I wish that I had been a little bit more creative, and knowing what I know now. And I didn't have a father or brothers to guide me. I just saw guys I went to school with. They went down this track. They ended up on Wall Street, and that was basically where I wanted to go. But now when I look back and I look at people who may have gone into operations in a specific industry. For example, I have a friend of mine who went and worked at Pepsi, and then he came back. He did an internship there. He came back. He took a job in management consulting and consumer products. Went to business school, came out, ended up running the consumer investment banking group for Lehman Brothers, because he had some industry expertise specific to a segment that he was excited about that no banker could bring to the table because they had not worked in that industry. So there's an opportunity sometimes to specialize in something or to get greater knowledge in an area by maybe going off of the trusted path, where I may know how to do, DCF models and understand I have all the functional expertise of a finance guy, but there was no way I was going to ever have the content, the knowledge of content and industry expertise that someone would have if they've actually worked in an industry. So I would say that there's different ways sometimes to end up where you want to go in 4 or 5 years, but maybe taking a slightly different path and ending up with some skill sets that may be somewhat differentiating from what, a traditional track where that might land you. So I would say that's one of the things that I do regret, is that I had a couple opportunities to leap off and go into business development, in a specific industry, and to get off of the investment banking track, and I didn't do it. I wish I had done that. And I think things would have been a little different, and I may have had a deeper core competency in some specific industries.
Bernard, you're a little young, but maybe you've made a mistake or two.
I can definitely say I've made many mistakes in my career as it is. There's so many different ways that I can approach this question. You know, there is the option of understanding why it's important to be humble, but I have to emphasize what both Jonathan and George have said. With the absence of fear comes opportunity. And one of the key things that I believe that has led me so far most of the time is understanding that you need to be fearless about what you're passionate about. You need to take that leap and take that step because it's important to you. And if you're passionate about it, you will put your all into it. Mm-hmm. And I can clearly state, even in my young career, I've had a lot of blockades, not because someone else stops me, and there's always going to be someone that will try to stop you. The most important story I can tell you is, I remember when I was a teller in the bank and I had this horrible bank manager. And one day it got me so upset that I said to him, you know what? I'm not going to quit. Give me 2 years and I'm going to have your job. 2 years later, I ran the same branch that he did. And I ran it to sales and operation standards higher than expected for that time. But one of the things that I realized about myself is when I gave into that fear, when I started to say that, you know what, I'm not going to be able to do it, I was the only thing that was hindering me from being successful. No matter what career path we choose, no matter what point we are in our career, we have to understand that we have to be that lightning rod for change for ourselves. Because even as I can tell anyone, and I tell my kids the same way, even if you mop floors every day, if you figure out a new way to do it, you can change the industry. So one of the things that I would say that has to be important is understanding that you must be passionate and you must remove that fear, because you know what? If you fail, it's just a lesson learned for the next time.
I'm going to mention one mistake that I think I made. And that was that a gentleman came up to me on the trading floor at Lehman Brothers, and he said, would you like to come to work for me? Now, this man was vicious, insulting. You think Donald Trump is mean. Okay, this guy was just awful. I'm not going to say his name because George might know who he is. But it was a really interesting business. But I just said, you know, I'm afraid to go to work for this guy. I'm just not going to do it. And so I gave him a name of someone who I did not want to work with. And that guy went to work with him. And that guy is a millionaire 10 times over, and is now on the board of directors of a very big university and incredibly wealthy. Now, I don't know how it would have turned out if I went to this guy, because as George said, there were very few mentors for the brothers in those days, and helpers. And I had one, but he resigned and went to work somewhere else. So I was on a ship with no captain, and so I turned it down. And I often think, gee, I wonder if I had taken that job, what would have happened? But I still think it might have been a mistake. But you know, that guy was really, really tough. So that's probably one of my big errors, if it's an error, but I'm not sure. So let me find another neat question. Okay, yep. Let me, Bernard, since you recently graduated, what advice would you provide a prospective SPS student?
So that's a very interesting question. And I'm a very interesting person to ask that question. I took a very unorthodox way to make sure I complete my degree. I didn't do it in the short period of time that everyone else did, because career was something that was very important to me. As Jonathan mentioned, I wasn't one of those that had those influences in my life to tell me, now this is the path that you should go and this is how you should get to that path. So for that reason, I had to find my own way of ensuring that I can get to where I needed to get to. But being at this point now where I can say I'm a graduate of CUNY, and being able to say that, you know, I completed this degree, what I've learned is that as a student, you need to understand no matter what obstacles are put in your way, you have to find that motivation and that passion to continue and to go after your dreams. No matter how hard, how long you might think it will take, it's not impossible. And if this pandemic has taught us anything, is that students, more than anything else, we persevered through this pandemic, and we are still going and trying to make sure that we can complete what our goal is. There is nothing else that can stop us. We just have to make sure that we stay true to what we want to accomplish.
Great, thank you. I'm going back for a second to something George said about the art student versus the finance student. I do remember once interviewing a really good finance student and an art student. And the art student convinced me that his latest job was much more important than most jobs. He was a lifeguard, and he said, I needed 100% focus. And isn't that what you need here? And I did hire him, and he's doing very, very well at Morgan Stanley. But anyway, my next question, and it goes to hiring students, is when you hire a student, what skills do you expect them to have when they hit the ground?
That's an interesting question, Frank. And I think that what students have to understand is that there's no one size fits all. I do think that each student will need to have mastered the basics of finance and accounting, if in fact they came from those core competencies. And I would expect that if they did study accounting and finance, that it would be a given that they understood the application and how to calculate, the various, formulas and concepts in those two areas. But what I would say is that students need to quickly understand where they aren't strong, and begin to understand that it's easy to identify and get comfortable with our strengths, but understanding where you have soft spots and where you need to improve, which you'll have to do as a human being, as a professional, no matter who you are, is to find out where your weaknesses are and determine how in fact they are hindering you from being better at what you do, and then find a way to improve upon them and further develop them. Because I think if you're unrealistic if you think that you don't have some weaknesses. Everyone does. And so paying attention to them and finding a way to develop them is important. The second thing I would say is what you mentioned earlier, and I've heard a couple of people mention it, is people call it getting mentors, right? But one of the ways to think about it is that you're in this world of, you're working every day in your job and you're in the fishbowl. And when you're in the fishbowl, what a mentor can do for you is swim around your fishbowl and help you see things that you can't see. And so I would say it's important for a student to understand that the mentor relationship is more than just someone here to give you advice, but someone to help you bring awareness to things that you just may not be able to see yourself. So establish a relationship with someone who is a mentor. Sometimes they're from your field, sometimes they're not. They're just wise people with a lot of experience who made a few mistakes. And hopefully you can learn from those mistakes. So those would be, a couple things that I would tell students to do. One, to understand where their soft spot is, but two, to develop some type of construct to help them, advance themselves in how they view life.
Okay. George?
Well, the answer to the question is long because
It's okay.
the question was, what skills do the students need? Well, they need varying skills for varying opportunities that they're going to pursue. If a student is interested in global capital markets or investment banking, then certainly they should have strong quantitative skills. They should have, strong written and presentation skills. They should have some modeling skills. They should understand the basics of accounting and finance. They should follow the markets and have a passion for it. What we're looking for in a student who is coming in as a first-year analyst, for example, or a graduate student who may be coming in as a first-year associate is not expertise. We know that you're not an expert.
Yeah.
But when I said about passion is that you have a deep interest and that you follow it.
Mhm.
Much the same way as someone who's passionate about sports and you say, oh, who's going to win the NBA championship? Oh, well, LA is going to win it. Well, why are they going to win it? Well, because they just traded for this person and LeBron James, and they have this, they're going to draft this person and so and so and so. And I say, are you an expert in basketball, professional basketball? And sometimes they'll answer yes. And I'll say, oh, who's the assistant general manager of the Milwaukee Bucks? They don't know. They're not an expert, but they have a view and they have passion about something that they follow. The same way in business, the same way in financial services. If you're interviewing for a sales and trading role, then you should have a passion about developing relationships, being a trusted advisor, following the markets, having opinions, about the market, about the markets. And it doesn't matter whether your opinion is right or wrong. Because when you ask somebody where equity market's going to be a year from now, and they say, well, I don't know. Well, I know you don't know. If you knew, you'd be kicking Warren Buffett's butt. I know you don't know, but what do you think? And what is your analytical framework? What is the passion that leads you to that opinion? So when we get the analyst or associate in, they're going to be trained.
Mhm.
They're going to go through a training program, but they have to have the fundamentals, as I mentioned earlier, clearing the first hurdle first. And one other thing, they have to be prepared for the interviewing process. They need to understand that once they get plugged in, every encounter is evaluatory, and that they should have a beacon with flexibility, and that the first job out of college is not dispositive of what they're going to be 15 years down the road. And this generation are a generation of serial achievers. They are unlikely to be like me in financial services over 40 years. They can. It's not that they can't do it. They're unlikely to do it. They're probably going to have 4, 5, 6, 7 careers in their lifetime. And it's not that it's bad. It's just that they're different. They're different than my generation. And quite frankly, a lot smarter.
I just got an 8-minute warning. So I do have one question from somebody. The name is George A. is the last name. And the question is, what insights can you provide to students who want to transition careers from financial services to an academic professorship? That's a hard one. I did it, but my road was really rocky. I did very well when I was in Columbia Business School and made some good friends as professors. And it was really good fortune that they hired me. I went directly to work at Lehman Brothers, and they hired me 2 years later to teach an adjunct class. Okay. And I did that for about 11 or 12 years. But to teach full time you generally need a doctorate. Sometimes an MBA will get you in as an adjunct, but you generally need a doctorate. So just answering George's question, I had to go get a doctorate to be able to teach full time. And then by the time I got that, I was pretty old. And so um, it was not easy to get a full-time job, but I did find one. But I don't know whether anyone else has any advice. And I know we have one professor that's in here in the room, and maybe she has something to say. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts? Can I unmute you? Oh, well.
No,
There you are. I hear you.
here I am.
Good.
Well, that's can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think that it's a lot of hard work and you should really consider what you're getting yourself into. You need to really think about whether you have some research interests. And that's what I love about the School of Professional. It's a place where there's many colleagues who will support you and try to help you develop your research passions. I found that more so at the School of Professional Studies than at other schools that I've taught at. So, and I've taught in a number of places. So that would be what I'd have to say.
Okay.
And I want to thank all the panelists. I know all of you and am so proud of your achievements and of how you're presenting.
I think so far they've done an excellent job, and I haven't been thrown off yet. So I'm going to ask Bernard one question, and that is, how has your experience as an SPS student prepared you for your industry success and growth?
So I started in my industry before I started at SPS,
Okay.
but the wealth of knowledge that I gained since I've been in the School of Professional Studies is actually one of the main reasons why I transitioned out of the branches and transitioned to back office into risk. It was a clear understanding of, as George says, and I am one of those people that switch careers, not frequently, but have seen change in my career in my short career span, I can say. But the specific thing that I noticed is that banking is not going to be the same as it is today, 10, 15 years from now. Banking is becoming more digital. The need for brick and mortar locations is no longer there, and this pandemic has taught us this. So I knew that I had to evolve with the times, and the School of Professional Studies and the classes I took helped me to understand it and helped me to know, what I should be looking for in the next role. I knew my passion was the financial industry, but what exactly that would be, I did not know. And this is helping me to figure that out.
I'm going to thank you all right now, because the last time when we went over time, they just cut us off and I didn't get a chance to really thank people. But I'm going to keep asking questions until they cut me.
Hey, Frank,
Yes.
just one correction I meant to make it early on. Banco Santander is not the world's largest bank.
Oh, I thought it was.
No, the world's largest bank by capitalization is JP Morgan.
Okay.
The world's largest bank by assets is the Industrial Bank of China.
My bad. Someone told me
Just-
Banco Santander was the largest bank. But that's the way it is.
They may have the best food.
Depends on where they are. I know in Brazil they do. All right. So let's just see if I can. Here's one. A finance major is considering a double major or a minor. What would you suggest?
it doesn't matter. If they're interested in it, do it. If they could do it and do well, do it. Finance and accounting, finance and operations research, finance and math. If they want to do it, just finance, just, whatever it is. The major is not the critical decision. Yeah, finance is great. Major in finance and minor in accounting, or vice versa, gives you that fundamental grounding. But that major, that double major, triple major, whatever it is, does not guarantee that you're going to be hired.
Right. Okay. We are done. I want to thank you very much for your help. Thank you for your participation. I thought it was excellent. You guys did a great job and you helped me. So I appreciate it. Let's try and stay in touch.
Thank you.
Anyone have anything to say before they totally cut us off?
Be safe, stay healthy.
Same. Be safe, stay healthy. I agree with that. Okay, I guess we're off. And another program is beginning. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Jonathan.